For more on this story, we're pleased to be joined via Skype by David Bossie. David is the president of Citizens United and the Citizens United Foundation. He's Skyping in from Washington and Skyping in from Northern Virginia. Our good friend Richard Viguerie. Richard, the chairman of conservativehq.com. To both you gentlemen, longtime friends, thank you so much for your time here on Newsmax Prime. So, to no one's surprise, the president announces we have to have a sense of urgency about gun control, but it looks like that urgency is translated to the campaign trail. For example, Senator Ted Cruz was quick to offer this tweet, and here's what he has to say. Fight back against Barack Obama's unconstitutional Second Amendment executive actions. Hashtag come and take it. He also included a picture of the president adorning a royal crown. So, Richard Viguerie, I guess to you, which candidate will get out front and benefit the most politically standing in opposition to the president? I know you've stated your support for Ted Cruz, Richard. Do you think this will be on target? His response with the tweet is just what the majority wants to see?
Well, absolutely. As we know, Ted Cruz is a strong constitutionalist and more, I think, than perhaps any of the candidates running for president on the Republican ticket this time. Ted bases his public policy positions around the is the Constitution, is it constitutional? And we know, JD, that this president and the Democratic Party, including Hillary Clinton, literally they are unhinged from the Constitution. Almost nothing that they do they run it through a Constitution filter. And I'm afraid, to paraphrase President Ronald Reagan, you ain't seen nothing yet. This president is moving left, and he's going to move hard left in the next few months, the few months he has remaining in his presidency. And he's going to bring Hillary with him, and I think it's going to be a big drag on the Democratic chances of winning the White House this coming fall. This president is moving hard left, and I think, quite frankly, from a Republican standpoint, I have almost a Marxist philosophy: worse is better. So the worse the president his actions, the better it is for freedom to eventually prevail.
Well, that's and I understand what you're saying, Richard. That's a political reaction, but in the here and now, David, this notion that the president once again bypasses the Congress. Yeah, there may be political benefit for conservatives, but right now, is it legal? And if Congress fails to counter this in some way, will it further alienate voters toward the Republican-controlled Congress?
Right, and I think, well, first of all, Richard's 100% right on his analysis that dragging Hillary to the left for the general election is no favor to her, first of all. Second of all, if Congress fails to act, it's going to once again prove why folks like Richard Viguerie, myself, and other conservative leaders have been so adamantly opposed to, well, the lack of conservative leadership in the House of Representatives and in the United States Senate. We've sent these people there. We gave them huge majorities to do what? Go along and get along with Barack Obama. So we're going to put up or shut ups here in the spring, and they're going to have to fight this tooth and nail through an appropriation system. And let me just say this on Barack Obama. He is doing everything he can to strip away our Constitution. And today it's the Second Amendment. And it comes on the heels, JD, of attacking for 7 years the men and women in blue, the police departments across this country. So on one hand, he's disarming Americans from being able to protect themselves and their families and their businesses. And on the other hand, he undermines the police departments whose very job it is to protect Americans. So I don't really understand what this president is doing.
And your sense of being perplexed at this president leads us back to the campaign on the Republican side for the Oval Office. Last night, we took a look at Donald Trump's first paid ad. Tonight, Jeb Bush, who I don't know if he'd admit just how his campaign is struggling, but he is continuing to attack Donald Trump. Let's take a look at Jeb this morning on MSNBC's Morning Joe.
Whatever Donald Trump's doing is working clearly. But here's the deal. He's not going to win Iowa. And if he doesn't win Iowa, then he's going to have a hard time here. And if he doesn't win here, then the whole thing collapses.
Now, that is a bold prediction. And Richard, we pointed out that you've already endorsed Ted Cruz. But the concern a lot of grassroots conservatives have is that somehow the establishment GOP will control the nominating process and try to put the kibosh on a populist conservative movement at the polls in the primaries. Should conservatives be wary of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think Republicans, people who fear for our country, should be concerned because the establishment Republicans are not accustomed to losing. They've been winning for the most part for decades now. And the question is, are they going to tear the Republican Party apart if they don't get their candidate? And every time a candidate like Jeb Bush or Chris Christie or Marco Rubio or John Kasich attacks Trump or these Republicans in Washington, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, former Speaker John Boehner, every time they attack Trump, all they're doing is throwing gasoline on that fire that's raging out there, anti-establishment. So the more Jeb Bush attacks Trump, the higher his numbers go. So it looks like the establishment has become a wing of the Republican Party. They used to dominate the Republican Party. Now they're just one of many wings of the party, and it's the conservatives, grassroots, that dominate the Republican Party at all levels now.
David, you wanted to comment on this.
First of all, I learned at the knee of Richard Viguerie and Paul Weyrich and Morton Blackwell and the great intellectual leaders of the conservative movement over the last 20 years. And I can tell you that days like this have been far and few between for us. And so we're grateful that the establishment is tearing itself apart. Look, Jeb Bush is having a miserable year. The more he attacks Donald Trump, as Richard just said, the stronger Donald Trump gets. So I'm happy about this. The one thing the establishment has never gotten, they've just missed the boat since 2010, and that is we're dealing with a movement. We're dealing with a movement to save America, a conservative movement to save America. Since 2010 and the rise of that Tea Party conservative faction that rose up out of nothing, the mom and pop grocery store owner, who the hardworking men and women around the country who came together in 2010 and are still around today. We call them whatever we want to call them. It's been the conservative movement since Ronald Reagan first was on the stage. So I'm excited that Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and Ben Carson are swamping the establishment candidates by triple and quadruple polling.
Well, there is another outsider that we haven't talked that much about, David and Richard. It's Carly Fiorina. Politics ain't beanbags. She got in on the Trump bashing today on Fox News. Let's take a look and listen.
There is no doubt Donald Trump is an extremely divisive candidate. That's why he cannot win. That is why he cannot be our nominee. But honestly, Donald Trump reminds me of the Kim Kardashian of politics. They're both famous for being famous, and the media plays along.
Kim Kardashian of politics. I want to get both of your comments on this. 15 seconds to you each. Richard, first to you, then to David.
Well, you know, Carly comes from the big government establishment wing of the Republican Party. Most of the views she holds now, she held different views 5-10 years ago. So I don't think the grassroots are going to pay much attention to that. Let's quickly, JD, let me second something that my friend David mentioned earlier. Obama has a war against the police, and Black Lives Matter, and President Obama are increasing the black deaths out there by going after our police. And the police should be and is the friend of the people in the inner city. And Obama and Black Lives Matter are hurting these people and causing blacks to die.
And we will have to leave it right there. Richard Viguerie and David Bossie. Gentlemen, you have our thanks. There's more ahead, so stay tuned.